Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE10 Nano project. And today this is one that you've all been asking for, comparing the PlayStation 1 core in FPGA versus DuckStation software emulation. And it's going to be a really interesting and strange comparison indeed. Before we get too far involved, though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, that notification bell definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, I need to explain. DuckStation and MiSTer can be basically one-to-one accurate, but DuckStation can do a lot of things that the PlayStation 1 core cannot, just based upon that FPGA hardware. But the thing that we're going to ask ourselves in this comparison is whether or not those things are worth it to you. I will say both are excellent options, and this isn't going to be your standard comparison where I declare a winner. I'm going to talk about what they do similarly, I'm going to talk about what the differences are, and then you get to decide which one would be better for you. But in software rendering mode on DuckStation and just using MiSTer as is, you'll see MiSTer on the left, DuckStation on the right. They look damn near identical. I do think that the MiSTer image is slightly clearer though, so in the pure software rendering side of things, I do notice, at least on R4 right here, that there's a little bit more detail in the image compared to DuckStation. I don't mind that I hit the wall there, but it's like a plus or minus delta of like 2%, and I'm sure you can't even tell which source I'm showing you right now. But here's the thing about DuckStation. It can be a software renderer just like this, but there's a lot of other options. We go across the finish line, and now we've turned hardware rendering on. I'm using the Vulkan API for this. I'm rendering it internally at 1080p. I've got correct perspective on the textures turned on, and I've gotten rid of all of that polygon warping and wiggling. This looks like a first generation PlayStation 2 game now, and it looks absolutely incredible. But does it look like a PlayStation 1 game? That's subjective. Now the thing about the hardware renderer though is you need to be careful where you're using it, because if you use it in the wrong spot, look at the face of the clock on that clock tower. It is jumping around and wiggling something fierce. Now that is just the option that I've used in DuckStation to show you. It's not a knock against the emulator, it's just how settings can function. You will see though, if we go over to MiSTer on the PlayStation 1 core, that clock always does jump a little bit, even on original hardware. It's just the difference between DuckStation amplifying that on the hardware render, but as you go by, take a look at that clock face, and it does like to wiggle ever so slightly. And that's the interesting thing comparing these two side by side, is that depending on what option you use, better or worse results could occur. Now, because Symphony of the Night is a 2D game, only very few things are rendered in 3D, but one that is the Holy Cross here. And you will see that looks absolutely incongruent visually to the background 2D sprites and background layers. But if we go over to MiSTer, pay attention to that cross right there, and now you're going to see it's much more pixelated. It's a 3D element, but it looks correct on MiSTer. You can also make it look correct on DuckStation. It's not a knock again against the emulator. What I'm saying is you need to be careful with what settings you use on DuckStation, because the settings don't pick the best ones for you. You need to know what you're looking at. But side by side, outside of that one cross, again, these look near identical, so you can have options as to what you want to choose, and that is always the great thing. I'm always advocating for more options because I don't really care how you play the games, so long as you continue to play them. But let's talk about audio, because visuals are only one half of the equation here. So what I'm going to let you do is listen to the quotes from Death and Alucard in the beginning, first on DuckStation, second on MiSTer, and you leave me a comment down below and tell me which one you think sounds better.
Alucard, what is your business here?
I've come to put an end to this.
Still befriending mortals. I'll not ask you to return to our side, but I demand you cease your attack. Alucard, what is your business here?
I've come to put an end to this.
Still befriending mortals. I'll not ask you to return to our side, but I demand you cease your attack.
I listened to those, I swear to God, 20 times, and they sound identical to me. The waveforms are a basic one-to-one match, but if you think they sound different, let me know down below in the comments. But Crash Bandicoot 3 here, with those enhancements with the hardware render, and 16:9 look absolutely stunning because the more colorful the game, the better those enhancements look. Over on the MiSTer side, we can still do that widescreen, but of course we don't have those enhancements. Now I think both look great, and it's really fun to see Crash Bandicoot in that high of quality, but for me personally, I like the pixelated nature of this because I grew up with PlayStation 1, and I think if you didn't grow up with PlayStation 1, you may like DuckStation better. When you do leave me a comment down below, tell me whether or not you grew up with the PlayStation 1 or if you came to it later in life, because I'd be curious to hear your perspective outside of just what you think looks better, knowing the perspective that you come from, because that would be really interesting. Because here, DuckStation on software renderer, and if we move right over to MiSTer on the FPGA core, again, very similar, but I do think that MiSTer's giving a better image with the traditional PlayStation 1 look. If you want that look, I would go MiSTer, and of course, you have options. MiSTer's going to be way more expensive than DuckStation, being a free emulator, but MiSTer does a lot more things than DuckStation. You get to decide. But putting them side by side, MiSTer on the left, DuckStation with the hardware renderer on the right, both are excellent. They both look stunning, and that's just down to the art direction. The results of changing the settings in DuckStation will be down to what the game looks like. Some games look incredible enhanced, other games look like garbage enhanced, and that's just down to how the art direction went. Well, let's take a look at something like Tekken 3 here, first on DuckStation, and we'll pop quickly over to MiSTer. This is a game where the characters are in 3D, but everything in the background is in 2D. And that's kind of the thing when you're playing around with the different settings. You need to realize that PlayStation used a lot of 2D elements for a 3D console. But over on DuckStation, in that true 16:9, it looks incredible again, but maybe it looks a little bit too nice. Those backgrounds, I like how they're pixelated up and you have like a nice render on it, but it just looks too nice to my eye, and that's not a knock against this. Don't leave me a comment saying I'm not being fair. I just like PlayStation how it used to look. But putting Spyro the Dragon here side by side in a moment, first on MiSTer in widescreen, we're going to cut right over to DuckStation, and like I said, the more colorful the game, the better the enhancements look. The less colorful the game, the worse the enhancements look. That is just my opinion. It has nothing to do with how the emulator works and everything to do with how it was designed. But that's the question you need to ask yourself when you decide which is quote-unquote better, DuckStation or MiSTer. What are you trying to achieve? A hammer hits nails, a saw saws wood. I wouldn't use a saw to hit a nail, and I wouldn't use a hammer to saw wood. These are two different tools that have two different purposes, and you need to decide what the best tool for the job for you is. But hey, they both play Pepsi Man, and that means both are winners in my book. But Pepsi Man needs to look a little more janky, so moving over to MiSTer, that pixelation is just doing it for me. But there's a real talk question right now. Who has the better logo, Mr. Coon for MiSTer or the Duck for DuckStation? Because they're two damn good logos, and I want to know which one you like better, because I think they might be a dead heat tie. They're both outstanding in my mind, because that duck looks pretty cool down there as well. But again, as I said in a previous video, if you've never played Pepsi Man, you're missing out, and you have to do it. But now here is the quiz portion of today's video. This is Symphony of the Night, and I am not telling you if this is on MiSTer or on DuckStation. I want to know when there's no enhancements on if you can tell the difference, because I'm always curious to see what people guess, and this is not a knock on my viewers, but I would say 60% of the guesses are usually wrong, and that means we're doing a really good thing with these two sources, because if you can't tell, both are amazing to use. And that's what I'm always advocating for on this channel. I don't want anyone to think I have any preconceived notions on which one I'd rather you play. All I genuinely care about is you find a way to play retro games and you enjoy them, because I love them, and I know so many people that have probably never played this game before will love it too. But yeah, MiSTer FPGA PlayStation 1 core versus DuckStation, they are extremely similar. DuckStation does a lot of things that MiSTer cannot, but the question is, do you even want those things in the first place? And that's something you need to answer for yourself, because I can't do it for you. Short of that, I'll be back next Thursday with another episode on our MiSTer series. I'll have videos for the week as well, but leave me your comments down below, and I will see you guys next time. Mr. Coon or DuckStation Duck, which one's better? Leave it below. Bye-bye.